Are we good now? Okay. Okay. Is it coming? Sorry, we'll get a signal here on audio. We got audio one. Do we have audio two? We got audio two. Wow, man. Okay. No, somebody's getting docked this week. I'm not going to say who, but he's almost 6 feet tall, brown hair, beautiful brown eyes. The chicks dig him, because, he rarely wears underwear. And when he does, it's something exotic, something animal print. So they're after him. Anyway, but I won't mention names. Welcome to Nothing Else Matters. Let's get into it. Today is, what do they say? One of the days on NEM. No, it's one of the great days on NEM. I was telling Connie, I am. I was telling my dad too. I'm just beyond a Lilo. So there's a Lilo, and then there's beyond a Lilo. I'm beyond excited today because if you've been tracking for a while with Nothing Else Matters, this is going to just reach so deep inside your knowing, deep inside your image-seated self, your large self that is made in the likeness and image of God. It's going to reach so deep inside there. And others of you, this is going to be the most beautiful and difficult thing I've ever put before you, before any of us, before myself. But if you can press through, if you can have the courage to reach to your knowing, reach beyond your religious knowledge into your intuitive knowing that God has put inside you, this is going to mark and change and deliver and prosper and propel you in a mighty way. So let's pray. Lord, I thank you for today. I thank you for this gathering. I thank you for utterance. I thank you for clarity. Lord, I thank you that this shall be heard, that somehow, some way you will get it out. Somehow, some way it will reach. It will let it be the highest thing we've ever put out to reach people, and help me with the articulation. Help me to say. Help us to hear. No weapon formed against this time shall prosper. And Lord, I thank you for just the advancement of your goodness, the advancement of your love, the advancement of your grace in the earth. I praise you for it, Lord. And I pray this in Jesus' name. A real quick thank you to all of you who support us. A thank you. Your support, even some of you before the broadcast even started, say, hey, I just want to let you know that I'm with you. It means so much. Connie was telling me, she says, do you know the first video that we ever did? This is number 141, by the way. Number 001, she says it's got like over 5,000 views. I said, yeah, that's how it started. That's when people say, oh my gosh, Pastor Mike, I love that guy. I've been listening to him for 30 years. It's not 5,000 folks with us anymore. But you're there, and I thank you for it. And also, you're so kind. Some of you who said, hey, I see the harassment and the hassleization. Be encouraged every time somebody makes some negative comment or somebody gets in and spams, blah, blah, blah. Every time somebody posts something crazy, we're going to throw a little extra love into our weekly and monthly support. It means so much. It's like you turn a negative into a positive. So thank you for that. Be on the lookout. It's a lot more out there than I knew. I didn't even know, but a lot of you have found there's stuff out there I was not even aware of. But I was thinking this week of somebody says, I'm giving an extra 5 cents every time somebody says something negative. So it doesn't stress you out because I want you to see that and go, what was it? Damon Wayans, was it Bo money? So anyway, thank you because you, of course, are a sweet, sweet gift to us. Okay, so I was telling Connie, if you have your Bible, this is a way, if you're at home or a place where you can grab a Bible real quick, we're going to look at a couple verses this morning that are very, very, very important to our teaching. So if you have a minute while I'm opening up here to grab one, and of course I'm going to be putting the notes out to you, and on Facebook and YouTube, the notes go in a live stream. And then they're posted every Sunday. Kenobi is upset. There's no food, brother. There's no food. So Luke, the 2nd chapter, we're going to look at some things. I've been studying, it's very interesting. Once you come into a clarity, as you step closer to the Omega view, step closer towards true religion out of transactional religion, conditional religion, and we don't have time to get into that. But your approach to the written word shifts it. I used to look at the written word and say, show me through the written word, let me see the mind of God. And now that you realize the mind of God exists not only apart from, independent of, but before, through, and beyond the written word. Now, when I go into the written word, I don't go into it seeking, okay, this is how God thinks of everything. I go into it with the mind of God, and with the mind of God, I say, okay, how do I understand these things? And it's really making the person of Christ. So my old religious life, I put my foot on the 66 books, and I pivoted based on those 66 books. God cannot be anything other than what's written in Genesis to Revelation. And I tried to squash the idea of God. Even if that idea of God was completely contrary to Christ, I tried to squash that down into my worldview because it has to fit in the book. And of course, now you realize, no, that's not how we live. That's not how Paul lived. That's not the record of Paul. That's not even the truth of Christ. The truth of Christ is that there is God that lives, right? The mind, source, order, God, the Word, that which is living, leading and guiding and moving us, that we put our pivot foot on God, on love, which we see in our tradition as reflected and revealed in the person of Christ. And when that becomes your pivot foot, you don't change you don't change your concept of God to fit a contra Christ presentation of God in Scripture. You change your understanding of the context and intent and creation and formulation and curation of Scripture to line up with the person of God. So I go through and I just take days and days at a time, a little bit of Mark, a little bit, and I go through, and when I finish a book, I go through and I make a million notes and comments, but I'm no longer relating to it like, what must I do to conditionally align with the Bible? Like, okay, here's the condition of the Bible. If I'm not doing these things that it says, God is after me. And of course, we already know, according to my old religion, God is after everybody who doesn't believe like I believe. Not you can even believe in Jesus Christ, but if you don't believe in Jesus Christ like I believe, of course, then you're on the Hell Express. So as I began to come across this, Connie and I went out. Did we go out Friday, Con, for coffee? Is that where we went? So we went out to this place with coffee, just chilling, just having a wonderful time, anniversary time. So I said, what anniversary? Not anniversary, but proposal-versary, if you will. She said, well, what have you been looking at? I said, man, I got to tell you this stuff. And it started flowing. I had been making notes and everything. And I'll just tell you this. This is not, I don't anticipate this to be the last NEM. I thought, well, I may have already won the lottery. I don't know. I haven't checked last night's numbers. But if I do win the lottery and I say, and you come on next week and it's like, hereafter I live in Belize, right? Hope you enjoyed the 141 episodes. If I have won the lottery and this is the final, nothing else matters. It's not going to be by God's grace, but if it is, you will not be disappointed. You say, well, the last one was one worth having. So I'm asking you, I'm begging you, who can you share it with? Who can you invite to this? Who can you say, you must, we must increase the number of eyes that see this, because here we go. I mean, it's just going to be beautiful. So Luke 2, I'm going to read this, and this is the record, the narrative, right, after Jesus is born. And so they've had the baby, they were in the taxation, they went to the manger or whatever, and the wise men, or the angels have appeared to the shepherds, and blah, blah, blah. And the shepherds go back and they say, man, we've seen, our eyes have seen the glory, right? Verse 21, Luke 2, and when 8 days were accomplished, that's a very important thing, when 8 days were accomplished for the circumcision of the child, where do they get, what's the importance of 8 days? Well, they get it out of the law, right? Genesis through Deuteronomy. When the 8 days were accomplished for the circumcising of the child, his name was called Jesus. Where did they get that name from? Which was so named of the angel before he was conceived in the womb, right? So we're talking about pre-existence here. Okay. And when the days of her purification, who is her? Mary, right? When the days of Mary's purification, according to, this is not just random made up, well, what's the days of purification? They got it, Luke 2:22, out of the law of Moses. When they were accomplished, they brought him to Jerusalem to present him to the Lord. Why would anybody take a child where they're born in Nazareth, right? Why would they wait a certain number of days, and then after waiting a certain number of days, why would they go do a thing? All of this came to them out of the law of Moses. They were following it literally line by line. Where did this come from? Well, he says right here, verse 23, as it is written in the law, what? Every male that openeth the womb, every firstborn male that openeth the womb shall be called holy unto the Lord. Because he was an older brother, right? The firstborn, a boy, he was set aside to God. Not according to something they made up, according to something they got out of the written word. And when you get there, you will offer us. They went to present Jesus before the Lord to circumcise him. So there's a purification, then there's a circumcision, then there's an offering, a dedication of Jesus to the Lord according to the law, and then finally there's a sacrifice, a sin offering that they had to give. Mary, because she was dirty, right? Because she was dirty, she had to give an offering, not only for the child, but she had to give an offering because of the filth of her sin for having a child. And what do they offer according to that which is in the law of the Lord? They offered a pair of turtle doves or 2 young pigeons. Turtle doves, 2 young pigeons, partridge, pear tree. There was an offering that had to be offered because of her dirtiness and because of her sin. Now, let's just pause here for a minute. Let's go to Leviticus. Let's go to Leviticus, or as Olivia used to say when she was little, Leviticus. Let's go to Leviticus. Was it Leviticus or something like that? Leviticus. Yeah, Leviticus. Let's go to Leviticus, chapter 12. And let's see the origin story, the backstory of everything that we've done. And please somebody said, well, I can't believe you're reading out of this. It's the most important thing I could ever tell you. And somebody said, that's hyperbolic. And I said, well, maybe it is. I don't think so. I think it's mega, 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 mega. Did he say mega? I'm not sure. Okay. And the Lord spake unto Moses, Leviticus 12:1. Now, no one heard God say this to Moses, right? We don't even know if Moses actually heard this, if this is what Moses actually wrote. We're told, hey, God talked to Moses and gave him some details and wrote it down, and here's what came out of the mind of God. This is what we're told came out of the mind of God. Watch this. Speaking of the children of Israel, saying, if a woman has conceived seed and born a man child, right? Then what's she supposed to do? She shall be unclean 7 days. So when a woman has a baby, she's unclean 7 days. I don't know if any of you have ever been around when a woman has a baby and seen all of those events. I think 7 days is a good start. According to the days of separation, for her infirmity, she shall be unclean. She's had a baby, right? There's a lot going on there, a lot of trauma, right? A lot of things happening. A lot of pain goes into bringing forth life. A lot of blood and a lot of stuff goes into bringing forth life, right? So for 7 days, she is unclean. Okay, you can kind of see God saying, you know what, let her chill down 7 days. Let her not come around the temple. Let her not come around holy things. Let her not touch anything that's sanctified. She's been through a lot. And in the 8th day, so 7 days, she doesn't do anything. She can't go to the temple. It's too dirty, right? But on the 8th day, she better get that boy down there for the clipping, right? They're going to snip him. And the 8th day, verse 3, that flesh of his foreskin shall be circumcised. And now she's not done yet. She's clean enough because of the 7-day waiting period to go bring the boy for circumcision, but she's still dirty, right? Now watch this. And then she shall continue in the blood of her purifying 33 days. And in that 33 days, because she is unclean, she shall touch no hallowed thing, nor shall she come into the sanctuary until the days of her purifying be accomplished. Okay, I'm willing to go with that, 40 days, right? 33 days, 7 days, 40 days. We take a break in the middle for the snip and clip. And okay, 40 days. That makes about right. So it's about 6 weeks. Okay, yeah, about 6 weeks. That's kind of where we are. A lady needs a little bit of time to recover, get her bearings back. Her stomach's been stretched. Her muscles have been moved. Okay. But if, verse 5, she bear a maid child, a woman, a girl, she's not unclean for 7 days. She's unclean for 2 weeks. Separation. And she shall continue to remain separated for purifying for 66 days, 66 days plus 14 days, 80 days. Why? Why the additional uncleanness? Why the additional separation? What is the difference between the birth of a boy and the birth of a girl? They're saying here that the birth of a girl makes her additionally unclean. Extended uncleanness, extended non-access, right? And when the days of her purifying are accomplished, whether she's done the 40 days for a boy or the 80 days, the double uncleanness for a girl, then she shall bring a lamb of the first year for a burnt offering, and a young pigeon or a turtle dove for a sin offering unto the door of the tabernacle of the congregation and to the priest. So now she's got to make an offering for sin, the sin of uncleanness, and the sin of uncleanness. You're unclean no matter what, boy or girl, but you're unclean doubly if it's a girl. And the priest, verse 7, shall offer it and shall make atonement for her. Atonement for the sin, right? The uncleanness. She'll be cleansed from the issue of the blood. This is the law for her, whether she is born a boy or a girl. So not only is there a double uncleanness for a girl, but anytime a woman has a child, you gotta kill an animal to offer it to God to offset the uncleanness of the process of bringing life into the world. And if she can't afford the lamb, it's too expensive, right? What is she going to do? What does Mary do? 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons. What's the first one for? The burnt offering. What's the second one for? Sin. It's a sin offering. The uncleanness that you've brought, which was a single uncleanness if it was a boy that came forth, it's a double uncleanness if it's a girl that came forth. And the priest shall make atonement for her, and then she shall be clean. Now, here we go. Last week we talked about the shape and the source of inspired religion. That all inspired religion, Mikey, if you can, comes out of a source, right? That there's a source beneath that is shared, right? This is a shared source. And notice the capital S, right? It's shared. It's universal. And that source formulates or takes the form of different, so it's a subsurface source down here. Below the surface, there's a source, and above the surface, it takes a shape. And it takes a shape, and the source is shared and universal, but the shapes, right? These shapes are cultural, regional, tribal. They can be national. And they're divided, right? Religions of the world don't share the same shape. The source is evident, right? The capital S source. There are threads of the source, veins of the source, right? There are traces of the source throughout each shape, but no shape. The source is embedded in each, but the shapes don't always match. And that is spread not only across territory, but across time. And the source is shared. It comes out of what we all know about God. That which may be known of God is divinely implanted each side. But when it takes on its form, when it takes on its structure, it takes on a structure that has various aspects of the source. and the aspects are tied to the territory. I mean, you could have some places, they say, well, these are the mountains where the God of the creation, and these mountains are holy. This is the sanctified ground where the God that created human beings in China, this is the mountain that she dwells in. And somebody else says, well, no, it's not there. This is the holy spot. This is the spot where you should come do sacrifice. Why? Because this is where, Jacob slept on a pillow of rock. I mean, well, but each one has a holy place. Each one has a consecrated place. Each one has a consecrated law. Each one has that which has halal, approved, and haram, forbidden. Each structure has the idea within it, but the structures have different expressions based on where they reside. And again, that's over territory and time. When you say inspired religion, thanks, Mike, what do you mean by inspired religion? Well, I mean by that, the image-seated answers, right? We dig into our small self, the image-seated answers to the chaos-conditioned questions we have. What about the chaos inside me? We look to the part of us that's made in the likeness and image of God to work that out. What about the chaos I see in other people in society? We look to the large self to see for an answer, and we formulate out of the source that in our large selves, in our image-seated selves, what we call our spirit, that we all have the same knowledge, but out of our experience and territory. I mean, I've been to Athens, I've been to Turkey, I've been to the Temple of Diana, I've been to these places, and this is the holy ground. This is where the temple appeared. This is where the vision. This is where they touched down. This is where the earth was split. And this is why we have to have compassion to the poor. So you see compassion on the poor in all these different places, but they all look like a different shape, a different nation, a different tribe, a different belief, a different mythos, a different lore, a different narrative, taking various shapes. Shapes what? That the source is creeping up and out of the individuals in the collective, and it's taking on. And when you go and when you're at a distance to other shapes, you go, my God, that's wrong. They're just so crazy. They're just so evil. But when you actually get out in the tribes, right? You actually get out into the jungles. You get out there and you find out what is the whole purpose of your religion. You're out here with no clothes. You're out here with this and that. You're a nomadic people. And what do they say? We are trying to find the place where there is no evil. We are in search of the land in which there is no evil. We are in search of the place to find where there is no war, no war, only peace, no suffering, no this. And you go, oh my gosh, you mean the kingdom of God? Or someone says, oh my gosh, you mean heaven? Oh my gosh, you mean the harvest of God? You mean you're in the search of the same thing that we are? How is that possible? The shape of your belief is completely different from mine. I'll tell you how it's possible, because the source is what flows through. So, now here it is. There is always, catch this in your notes, throughout the progression, right, there is always tension between the shape and the source. Because the source and the shape are not always aligned. And there is a tension between them. That throughout progression, right? Throughout time, throughout territory, the source is always seeking to pull anything in the shape that is not aligned with source. The source is seeking to pull the shape more in line with its true nature of religion. But the shape is trying to pull it more into the us, them, our tribe, our way, our people. So what happens? The shape says we've got to defend our faith. We got to defend our holy place. The shape says we got to tear down their fake holy places. They think this is an altar where God is. Don't be ridiculous. Everybody knows that the altar where God comes is 200 miles short of that. Or so we have to protect our holy site. We got to tear down their holy site. We got to protect our holy landmarker. Well, we remember where the angel did this or the victory did that. We got to protect that. We got to tear down theirs. Or what we have in our Abrahamic religion is we both believe that this is the source where something happened, but one person says this is the source where this took place, and another person says this is the source where this took place, so we fight over the same thing. what is this location? It's hallowed. Hallowed for what? This is where God. No, this is where God. You're a liar. We both agree that it's hallowed. We just want to fight each other over what makes it hallowed. And so the source, which is nonviolent, the source which is shared, the source which is universal, is in constant tension with the shape that seeks to preserve, the shape that seeks to protect, the shape that seeks to conquer, so that if we want to go into a war for 30 years, a 30-year war, well, we're just going to have a 30-year war. And if we want to have 5 million people killed, we just have 5 million people killed. Well, 5 million people, I guess ain't a lot of people, is a whole heck of a lot of people, especially with how many people there were at the time. Why are we doing it? Well, because we have the right shape. They don't have the right shape. And the source is in constant tension. And you can be Protestant or Catholic. I mean, you can be in the trouble, Sinn Féin. You can be Northern Ireland. You can be Sunni or Shia. You can be, I mean, you could be, it's 1,000 different versions of the same conflict. It was what? The universal, which should draw us together, is being pulled by the individual and the conflict in the territory and the tribal, and there is a constant tension. And in that tension exists even through movement. So even though the shape of certain religions changes and unfolds over time, it changes and unfolds over time, but the tension between the source and the shape are seldom alleviated. So here it is. The source that we're talking about, or the mind, what we call God, is eternal. What I mean by eternal, it's sans cosmic. It's not, well, the eternal goes in all directions of time. I don't mean that. I mean, although that is a way to discuss eternity, I mean that the source, that God exists without time, right? Sans cosmic. The source is constant. The source is unchanging. That's the crazy thing. I don't have enough whiteboard in the world. Look at this. The source, okay, so we have the surface, right? Beneath the surface, we have the source. And over time, different shapes pop up over time, right? And we think the source is moving through time, and that just as the shapes are moving through time. But that's not really what's happening. What's happening is the source that runs beneath the surface of all inspired religion, the source is constant. And the shape moves through time, progressive, and the shape of it takes on different things. And you'll have some shapes that will have a good run, and then they will come to a seeming end. You'll have other shapes that pop up. I mean, listen, when you have the Branch Davidians, right? The shape of that religion, it popped up, it went down. It may still be going on for all I know. I don't know. But you say, well, that fell away. We know in the book of Acts when Gamaliel talked about, yeah, well, you heard about the guy who raised up that thing and then they all got killed off and blah, 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 blah. It flared up. But then some religions, right, some shapes endure for a long time. But even though the shapes have their different durations and times, the source doesn't function like that. The source is constant. It's eternal. God, the mind, the source, the order of the universe is constant. It's not growing. It's not like, well, we have a little more God now than we did. The knowledge of God is constant. The shapes that source takes on have finite beginnings, defined beginnings, and in many cases, defined end. Now, let's get to this. So I hope you're understanding what I'm saying. I realize this is a lot, but this is everything. Because we encounter the source as a stream, because we are in motion, not because it is in motion. It's not that the truth is moving through time. Truth is not progressive. Our understanding of truth is progressive. This is what you got to get. You have to, somebody said, what is the problem? You have to think about the practice of Mary in Luke 2 was not self-originating. She was practicing in Luke 2 what originated back here in Leviticus 12. And when she was practicing it, she understood it as the authoritative dictation of the divine mind. Now we understand, well, that's ridiculous. I have had a daughter. I have been in the room when my daughter was born. She was a little bitty, 5 pounds, 14 ounces, just a little bitty, I put her in my pocket. I used to take her to movies, put her in my pocket. I wouldn't even pay for a ticket. She was so small, I could put her in my pocket, sneak her in, and get one popcorn, and then open when the lights went down, and I would just feed her popcorn right out of my pocket. I mean, that's how small she was. I saw what happened to my wife. Let me tell you, I had a son. He was 9 pounds. It's a little different. Well, you've seen Alien. You know how it is. I'll tell you this, there's not a single bit of difference in uncleanness between the birth of a son and the birth of a daughter. None. As a matter of fact, I'll go so far as to say there's no uncleanness at all. And even if we stipulate, well, they didn't know any better, they saw blood, they saw guts, they saw chunks, they saw schmear, and they thought, this can't be good. They probably equated it to the refuse that comes out of everybody's body. You know your body spits out stuff when it goes to the bathroom. That's obviously unclean. Look at what a woman's body spits out when she has a baby. Whoa. Okay, let's even say that in their framework, as they were building a structure, that as the source of a true religion was taking a cultural regional structure about ideas of clean and unclean, they obviously didn't want to offend God. They didn't want to have a bad crop. They didn't want to have a bad famine. They didn't want to have sickness or disease. So the order to do that, where are the haram points, the forbidden points that we should shore up by ritual and cleansing, and where are the hallowed things, which are halal, which are kosher, which are how do we build a wall to keep the halal out? How do we open a gate to how do we build a wall to keep the haram out? How do we have a gate to keep let the halal flow in? How do we formulate these ideas? And well, you know what? We all know when we have too much Taco Bell, we end up with Taco Belly. And my God, you don't go near those wings because you're gonna need 6 plumbers and an old priest and a young priest. And so we know. And man, when you see what comes out of a woman when she has a baby, you are gonna say this is as unclean as what a body rejects. So that's their idea. It's not true. But even if it were that a woman is unclean, can't go near God, think about that. Bringing life into the world, the very idea of childbirth was considered the result of sin. The very idea, well, it hurts. Yeah, because women messed up, especially. God's upset with them. You're going to pay the price for this forever. So not only are you bringing forth children in a painful way, you're bringing forth children in an unclean way. I can almost get that they saw it that way. And I can almost get that when Moses sat down for divine dictation and hoisted his sail, we just want to do the world in the way that God sees fit. I understand that as he was writing, he thought in his brain, or whoever this is, thought in their brain, I'm harnessing the wind. We're going to build a structure here rooted in the source. I can almost get that. It reminds me of the Seinfeld thing, and I'm not going to do it justice here, where he said, he talked about his, I think it was his mother, his grandmother, whatever, had one wall in her room, in her living room, that the whole thing was mirrors. And the whole thing, one wall was mirrors. And he says, I guess, you could say, well, it makes the room feel bigger, and he said, but we had a bird. And he said, sometimes the bird, she said, her bird would get out and fly around, and it would run right into the mirror. And Jerry Seinfeld, he said, I can get that the bird thought, well, there's more room over there. I'm just going to go to the room. He's got a bird brain. He doesn't know that it's a mirror. He doesn't know what a mirror is. Doesn't know what it is. And he says, I can get that he thought there was more room there and that he hit the wall. That's understandable. He said, but you would at least think he had the common courtesy to move out of the way of the other bird heading right towards him. You would think that he would have moved out of the bird's way. And that's the same thing that's happening here. I can understand that they would think that when a woman has a baby, man, she's got to chill. You can't go to church. Don't touch nothing. Don't go near nothing. I'm part germaphobe. When I saw they had the baby in the ward and all the stuff that it went on the ground and all that kind of stuff, and then Olivia comes in with Mikey and she says, "I'm gonna set my doll down to tie my shoe." Don't set your doll down on this floor. My God, you don't know what's on this floor. I get that. But where do we know? How do we know it's obviously that this did not come out of the mind of God? Not that who was writing it didn't think they were capturing the mind of God. How do we know for sure it's not the mind of God? Because when it came to, oh yeah, if it's a girl, she's brought, not only the dirty woman has brought something dirty into the world and gotten dirty in the process, because she brought in another girl, she brought in something doubly dirty. She brought in something doubly dirty. And that is how you know this is not divine dictation. Well, of course it is. God is male. God doesn't have children. God doesn't get bloody. God doesn't have pain. God doesn't have a vagina. He's got a nice, simple penis that doesn't cause any complex. So we know the woman is the dirty one. We know the woman is in sin. And when she brings a male into the world, she's bringing something at least in the direction of God, so much so that if a male gets to that womb first before a girl has defiled it, that male is going to be awesome and belongs to God. That's awesome. But if a girl, when a girl gets there, man, any girl, you're just bringing more mess through more mess. And any person who knows Christ has got to go, yeah, no. So we encounter this, and we think that the knowledge of God is moving. Well, people just didn't know about much God. That's not true. I don't know if you've ever been parked in a car in a parking lot, and the car behind you, or at a stoplight, and the car behind you moved forward or backward, and you thought you were moving. It can feel like, because we're coming further and further and deeper into the knowledge of God, it can feel like, and this is how I explained it for years. I mean, I was a pastor for 30-something years. Or in ministry for 30-something years. How would you explain Exodus? I would say, well, back in this time, God wanted us to kill an animal just so that God wouldn't be upset. But now that Jesus has been killed, now that God's got human blood instead of animal blood, well, we don't need to do animal blood anymore. Oh, back at this time, yes, when a woman had a baby, because there was no forgiveness for her through the blood of Jesus, she had to get forgiven for her uncleanness. So she had to, but not now. It's not that a wife, can you imagine me coming to church and before Facebook and before this, and I come to church and I say, hey, brother, hey, I said, man, how you doing? Where's Connie? I said, oh, she's at home. She's having her uncleanness period after we had the baby. Oh, yeah. But when was the baby born? I thought it was like 3 weeks ago. Oh, I didn't tell you. It was a girl. Oh, okay. So maybe she'll be back July 4th. I know she got an extra couple months. I mean, you could see a little girl, right? A little girl, she has a baby brother, and she's 5 years old, and she has a baby brother, and mom can't come home for 2 weeks, for 40 days because she's unclean, and she can't sit on mom's lap, and mom can't cook, and she can't do this. And the little girl's like, why can't mommy make my cookies? Well, honey, she's not allowed to because she's in a place of cleansing, and once she's done, she'll give something to God, a sacrifice to God, and then she won't be dirty anymore. And then she can come and make your cookies. And So the little girl, and she's holding her baby brother, and it's awesome. Well, that girl who's 5 when she has the baby, the next baby comes along. That girl's 8. The little boy's 3, and mommy has another baby. And she says, man, I sure do wish mom would make me my favorite pancakes. And said, well, now I know, we got to wait 40 days. No, sweetheart, not 40 days. Mommy has to wait 80 days. Why? Well, because we had a little girl. What does that mean? Well, when a little girl comes in the world, it makes the woman extra dirty. Someone say, did the thing freeze? No, it's just. But this is what they thought. So much so that the record of Jesus is they follow this. And I'll tell you one other thing. This is going to sound strange. This is invented by the patriarchy. It's oppression. It's men. No, nobody was inventing anything to abuse women at all. The men and the women thought this is what God wanted. Well, men just make up reasons to. That's no. It's not this evil conspiracy of men. Not that men aren't problematic, right? And there's witchy women too. But this idea that, you know what we ought to do? We ought to make it so that women think they're extra. No, it's not. It wasn't. This isn't maliciously invented. They thought they were capturing the divine mind. And guess what? The women knew it too. And the women would tell their daughters, now listen, it's very important that you're purified because we are the ones that brought sin into the world by what we've done, by what Eve did to Adam. And therefore, and it is going to be difficult when you have a child, and you are going to have to take time to get cleansed, and you're going to have to make an offering. But I didn't sin, Mommy. It's not that you sinned. It's that Eve sinned, and that we are now perpetuating her uncleanness. So we have to offer to God. Listen, your Father's business. We want blessing. You want the child to live long, don't you? Yes, I do. Then you can do it. Well, but I can't come. No, you can't come home because when you have a little girl, I did this with you. When you had a little girl, I stayed away an extra 40 days because God asks us to not bring pollution into holy things for an extra 40 days. And the young girl gets raised by that. Well, she doesn't want to have a child that's cursed. She doesn't want to not have God's blessing on her house. And the man says, you will stay away, you will stay away. He's not doing it because he hates women. He's doing it because he thinks it's what the divine mind wants him. The same reason he's not mixing his dairy and his meat. What do you mean you can put cheese on that burger? Cheese on the burger? Are you kidding? Do you want my business to be ruined? It's the same reason you can't pull up to the synagogues. Oh man, I've got a parking space right up front. What are you doing? What do you mean? You live a quarter mile away? Yeah, you know God doesn't want you driving a car. That's what we do. You got to walk, you got to hike, you got to do this, you got to fast and pray 40 days on Lent. What? You ate what? You ate fish on a Thursday? Are you mental? You don't eat fish on a Thursday. Fish is Friday. Fish Friday. What's her name? Marie. Well, yeah, that doesn't make any sense. Doesn't make any sense, but it's not started by, it's not a ploy by Big Hatchery to get people to eat fish on Friday. It's just what they believe was the divine mind. The shape seeks establishment. The shape of religion seeks establishment. The shape doesn't want to move. Why? We're fixed here. We don't want to move because why wouldn't we want to move? Why wouldn't we want to move? The reason we don't want to move is we believe we've captured, we've embodied, that's supposed to say, we've articulated the final revealing. We have the law. The law is unchangeable. We're not going to move here. Why? Because when Leviticus 12 was written, it's everything you ever need to know about the birth of a child. Well, I just think we should look at that and reconsider it. Reconsider it? You don't reconsider it. You don't move on from it. You don't stop it. When we got this, we got the sum total of all truth. Now, there are people out there that'll lie to you and tell you that there's more truth to be had. There's no more truth to be had. When Moses came down from that mountain and he said, if you have a boy 40 days, we need you to sit this one out. If you have a girl 80 days, sit this one out because you're doubly unclean. They came down and they said, well, that's all there is to know about that. The shape of religion, the structure of religion does not want to move. Why? Because why would you move on from the final thought? I was talking to a Muslim man one time, and I said, he was talking to me about, and I'm a pastor, and he was inviting me to do these things, and I said, here's my basic understanding. I said, see if this is how you understand. I said, it's my understanding that Christians look at Jews as, well, you're close, but you won't embrace the full. Jews look at Christians as, well, you guys have gone way out of bounds, past what you should have. And I said, I suspect you Muslims look at us Christians and go, well, you're close, but you haven't come into the full, just like we look at you and go, yeah, you are way out of bounds. He goes, that's pretty much it. Why? Because no shape thinks it should ever move. No, movement is an enemy to the shape. Why move on when we have the pillars? Why move on when we know the rituals? Why move on to, well, maybe we could eat. Can we reevaluate our dietary rules? The dietary rules, it was already said. And so what is it? The shape is static. The shape resists movement. Why? Because we have the final truth of the thing. Why would we ever move on from the final truth of a thing? And because you believe you have the final truth of a thing, right? That tends to its rigidity, right? Its stubbornness. it tends to its violence. Why? Because anybody suggesting, I think we ought to knock out this wall of the structure, and I think we ought to expand that. Well, now you deserve violence. Why? You are moving a wall that cannot be moved. And this is what they did to Jesus, right? He came along and goes, no, that's not really a thing. Unwashing hands and stuff and clean and all that stuff. And no, don't touch that. He said, that's not really a thing. How could you say it's not a thing? We're reading it right here in Leviticus 12. Your own mother believed it. He said, yeah, I get that. Jesus' own mother took him and circumcised him. And Paul saying, I don't really think that's a thing. Of course, we got to kill you. Why? Because the belief that we have, the period, the final thing that will be said, gives the shape of religion its rigidity, its stubbornness, its violence. And it's also this false belief that it has the period that leads to and tends to its eventual, inevitable, guaranteed, and divinely ordered obsolescence. It's a typo. So when I believe all knowledge ends at the book of Malachi, anybody suggesting there might be something beyond Malachi, you're trying to change the structure. And we need to resist that. We need to dig in. We need to be rigid about that. And the Pharisees, their job was to go through and put a tax out for looking in the mirror twice. You are breaking the law. Breaking the law, give 2 of these, 3 of these, take 1 of these and don't ever do it. That's what they believed. And Jesus came along and they're like, excuse me, why are you doing this on Saturday? You know you're not supposed to do this on Saturday. You're riding a bike. You're working. You're carrying something. You just told a guy to do physical labor on the day. May I remind you, Mr. of Nazareth, Exodus chapter 13. May I go back over this with you again? Listen, the rules, there's a lot of rules. I'm sure you forgot. When you think the final period of all religious knowledge stops at Malachi, the suggestion that it may go beyond is just heretical. Everybody knows that the knowledge of God doesn't end at Malachi. It ends at Revelation. Now, don't be an idiot. Well, when you suggest that it might be something that didn't end at the book of Revelation, you've betrayed God. Here's the thing. Each formalized shape of religion has a beginning and it has an end. And when I say end, I don't mean that it has a stop, but there is an end of all formalized religion. What is it? It's not a cessation, it's a destination. The Assyrian religions, the Babylonian religions, the Egyptian religions, the Greek religions, the Roman religions, the nature religions, Christianity and Protestantism and Buddhism and Hinduism and Taoism and Confucianism. They all have. Well, are they going to stop? There have been religions that flared up and that one ended. That one came to an end. They don't stop. They are moving toward an end. What? They feed into one another. It's not so much that the religions have a stopping point, they have a destination. Even when it comes to a religion that has seemingly vanished, it's been seemingly phased out. In your notes, we must appreciate that they've not phased out, they're just continuing on in a new form. A new form what? A new form where we think, well, I know the Jews in Jesus' day thought they had everything. I know the Christians in the book of Acts, chapter 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, I thought they had everything, but Paul came out with something else. And what did Paul come? Paul didn't come out and say, oh, Judaism needs to end, I'm inventing something new. What we have in Christianity is the continuation of Judaism in a new form. A new form what? It has taken a new shape. Here's our belief. Thank you, Michael. Here's our belief that the source is beneath the ground and that out of the source came all knowledge of the law and the prophets, and that here's what we think and wrongly think. We think that at Paul's conversion that ended and God created a new thing called Christianity and then gave an invitation. Hey, you want to get in the real thing, you Jews who are deceived or not? That's how we think of it. But in fact, that's not what happened at all. What happened was, what we thought was, as Christians, we say, well, that's the cessation of Judaism. It ends right there. It doesn't end right there. We are actually saying that it continued, Paul would say, it continued in an enlarged form. Yeah, but it's not really, if you're taking out the circumcision and you're taking out the feast rules and you're taking out the uncleanness and you're taking out the sacrifices and you're taking out the temple, then it's not really Judaism. So what do? We just called it something new, but it didn't originate. Paul didn't get out in the woods and originate something. He perceived that he went farther in something that was the mystery that he had been living his whole life. God, I don't know if anything is being caught here. Let me calm down. What did Paul tell us? That all doctrine, all knowledge, all teaching, or the shape of religion shall pass away. But what did Paul say would remain? What would be eternal? What would go on saying cosmically? Not the shape of religion, but the source of it. Love. What did Paul say? For knowledge shall pass away, teachings and doctrine shall cease, but what will not pass away? Love. God. So what? The stream is eternal, but the shapes rise and fall. And when they come up, they try to protect themselves. Why? The people that came before us, they totally didn't know what they were talking about. We do. And the people that come after us are total enemies to God. So think of this. Think of Second Temple Israel. The Jews had their revelation, Second Temple Israel. The only thing left after this is the end of time and God coming to rule directly. Period. That the sidewalk ends where we are, and the only new information that's ever coming down the pipeline is that God is going to come and put the temple up, make all nations bow down, and that's the end of all knowledge. And Christianity came along and said, we think the shape that we have is a little more in line with the stream than what you have. As a matter of fact, if you don't get with our thing, you're actually outside the stream because we have the correct knowledge. And what did the church do? What did the Catholic Church, lowercase c, capital C, what did they do? They locked in. And here come the reformers. I've been thinking that maybe the seat of power should not be a papal seat, but maybe it should. Oh my gosh, how dare you? We are the new establishment of the shape of religion that has moved on from the terrible error that the Jewish people had. We've moved on from the Norse religions. We've moved on from the African. We've moved on from that, and now we have the real religion. And Martin Luther, you're going to say that we don't have to fast during Lent. How dare you say that? I mean, and what do? We have to react violently because you're suggesting it might be bigger. Now, how many of us? All of us, almost all of you watching now, enjoy the liberty of the heresy. You don't fast during Lent. You don't believe in we don't believe in the transubstantiation. What am I trying to say? The bread and the wine, right? Transubstitution, whatever it is. You don't believe in that. You don't believe that the seed of revelation lies in papal power inside the Holy See. You don't believe that. Why? Because you're standing comfortably in the structure by Martin Luther's heresy, by the Reformers' heresy. You're standing comfortably in the structure of that, looking back on the antiquated structure of Roman Catholicism. Oh my gosh, how wrong could you possibly be? Smoke and incense and fast and priests and confessions and sacrifice. I mean, my God, how much error can you be? The same way they look back at Judaism. The same way somebody looks back at Protestantism and says, man, the solas and the predestination, that's just error. What are we doing? We think we're tapping into something new. We're not tapping into something new. We're managing the tension between the stream and the structure. But what's the only thing that we know that's going to survive? It won't be Calvinism. It won't be Lutheranism. It won't be Catholicism. It won't be Protestantism. It won't be Buddhism. It won't be Hinduism. It won't be Confucianism. It won't be Taoism. It's not going to be Islam. What will endure? What will endure is the stream. The structures will come and go, but the stream, the knowledge, the teaching, the doctrine, the halal, the haram, all that will go away. What will endure is love, God. The source, the stream, beneath every structure. So, got a couple minutes here. Let's move forward to this idea. The shape of religion, right, comes out of the small self. Quickly in your notes. The shape of religion comes out of the small self, out of the human-addled structure, the complex religious systems. There are complex religious systems. I used to be part of one. You used to be part of one. Many of you are still part of one. There are complex religious systems, and they come out of the small self, and they're human-addled. They're okay, but they're weighed down by the small self humanity. But the source, the shape comes out of the small self, but the source comes out of a divine stream. So a structure versus a stream. We have a misunderstanding in my religion. We used to have to live by Leviticus 12 and have women unclean. If they had a baby, male baby, it was 40 days they were unclean, and then they could offer sacrifice. But then it was 80 days of that. But man, thank God we're not under the law anymore. Now that Jesus come, we're under grace. And we misunderstand that idea. Here's how we hear it, that God's law is perfect, that Leviticus 12 came directly from God, here's how we hear this. We hear it that God said, yes, of course you're dirtier when you bring a girl into the world than when you bring a boy. Of course I think like that. I mean, why would I not think like that? I have a penis and a prostate. I mean, of course, I'm a boy. Come on, men, we know. Ladies, We think that came from God. And because we're told to think that came from God, that it was so difficult and so impossible, that's God's perfect mind, God's perfect idea, Genesis through Deuteronomy, that's what you need to know about God. That's the way God thought. It's the way God thought about rape. That's the way God thought about sex. It's the way God thought about adultery. And out of that structure came, out of that flawed Antichrist idea, was it a structure built on the stream? Yes, it was. But was it full of a lot of blind spots? Yes, it was. But we hear, but thank God now, right? Jesus has come. We're no longer to that. God doesn't make us do all these rituals. God doesn't watch if we mix our foods. God doesn't mind if we drive to church. God doesn't want the ladies to sit out for 2 2/3 month from church because she had a girl. I mean, man, thank God. That's what God really wants. But thank God we're under a little place where he's relaxed about it now. I mean, the law, that's the perfect mind of God. That is exactly right. A woman is dirtier when she has a girl than when she has a boy. We're not saying that's wrong. We're just saying, thank God we don't have to live under that anymore, because we could never do it. We were always having to do another sacrifice. And God knows, look, y'all will never keep this. Just let me just believe in me, and we'll just call it even, okay? Woo! Thank God we don't have to do the perfect mind of God and keep our ladies dirtier when they have a child. That's how we think. But that is not what happened. That idea is closer to the idea than the old idea, but it's dreadfully narrow. It diminishes the largeness of Christ. Here in your notes, it's going to come at you fast. Paul was pointing us to something larger. His encounter with Christ, or his encounter with God, his encounter with love, personified through the image and icon of Christ, it showed him that the stream beneath the complex shape of his former religion had a tribal, national, regional tint to it. Paul on the surface, thank you, Michael, Paul on the surface, he believed that the stream beneath it, that it flowed directly into the Jewish structure that he knew the world. And he found out on the road to Damascus when he met the dreadlock Rasta, on the, he may have a blue-eyed, blonde-haired Jesus, not me, but when he met the dreadlock Rasta, the Christ on the Word, he looked back on it. This is like the star child from Kiss Meets the Phantom. He looked back on his old religion and said, oh my God, I always assumed that my old religion had an umbilical cord directly to the stream, but now I realize that I'm seeing through the eyes of Christ. I realize, no, it's got tribal parts, it's got national parts, it's got divided parts, it's got cultural parts. And Paul starts to think, wait a minute, now that I'm looking through the eyes of Christ, maybe that the structure of religion looks different then, and Paul purposed to build a structure of religion that had a direct umbilical cord. And out of that, we have some ideas that are remnants from this old idea that made their way into the new one. We have some new ideas that popped up in the new one that are actually worse in some ways than the old one. I mean, we got a lot of confused things. But Paul thought it's bigger than my tribal idea. And he starts thinking, I don't even know if there are nations. I don't even know if there are classes. I'm rethinking the idea of male and female, that somehow one is above the other. I'm rethinking the idea of circumcision. I'm rethinking the idea of foods being clean and unclean. I'm rethinking the idea that God's mad at everybody. I'm rethinking the idea that the Jews have the God and nobody else has God. I think the Romans and the Greeks have the same God we do. They don't have the law. They don't have this book that tells them how dirty their women are after they have a girl child, but they have the true knowledge of God, which is love, which is empathy, they're keeping the essence of the law. And so, I mean, this is what's happening to Paul, and out of it, you and I inherit his larger worldview. Thank you. And Paul dedicated himself, his life, thanks, Mike. And Paul dedicated himself to removing the superfluous, the skewed, the contra Christ misleadings of his foundation. And he started saying, no circumcision, no feast days, no new moons, no Sabbaths. No, we got to make a trip to get clean. No. How are you attacking the structure? He said, because I have found things within my structure that are not in harmony with the stream. And what is he trying to do? Move his religious concept closer and closer, more fidelitous, more fealty, more connection, more harmony with the stream. And what did he figure out? You know what I figured out about the stream? He says, it's love. It's love in person and it's love in action. And Paul thinks he's going to go back to his brethren from the structure. Go, guys, we had it all wrong. This is what Jesus said. He says, yeah, if you look through Genesis through Malachi, he says, I can basically sum it up for you. Just see your neighbor and yourself and treat them like you're treating them. That's really the only thing worthwhile in there. What does Paul say? All that stuff, right, about new moons and Sabbath, that's a shadow. There's nothing. He says it's all hollow. It doesn't mean anything. Trust me, I got the tats, man. I believed in that whole thing. I got the nickelback tats between my shoulder blades, the barbed wire. He said, I did the whole thing. I was headlong. I thought this is the ultimate thing ever. And he goes, I can look back. I harm myself. I harm other people. And that's not really true. He says, what am I doing? I'm just trying to get down to the constant. I'm trying to get down to that which is eternal. I'm trying to get that. So what does Paul say over in 1 Corinthians? What does he say over in Romans? He says, when you think about any commandment that you may find, people are like, well, you ain't really Jewish. You're not doing Jewish. He says, man, if you really think about it, all it really comes down to is empathetic love for each other. That's really the only worthwhile thing. What's he doing? He's seeing through the flaws and the skewing deceptions of the structure, and he's trying to put it down to a stream, consistent religious worldview. And how often do we see him? In your notes, we are closing. How often do we see Paul and Jesus reduce or summarize and formalize the sum of all former systems and say, it's all about love? So what should it be our pursuit? Our pursuit should not be fidelity to the old structure, which is a rebellion against the former structure, which is a rebellion against the former structure. Our pursuit should be, how do we move closer and closer to the stream along the same trajectory? The former structure is not a problem. It was a stop in the trajectory. The two structures before us, one structure before us, the structure before that, where it's going, these are shapes and structures built along the trajectory. What you and I should be doing is, look, I don't want to put a new shape together. People say, you got to put the doctrine of NEM on paper and you got to send it out. I can't. Why? Because I'm dedicated not to pointing you towards a shape or a structure. I want to point you, I want to point me, I want to point my children to that which is universal, the substructure, the stream, the source, which is embodying love. What happens? My last point. What happens when the structure is carried forward without the stream in view? Think of what happened when Jesus encountered, we encountered in the Gospels. What? He said, you guys have built all these traditions. Yeah, more structure. You've got all these rules, more structure. Don't touch this, can't do this. Look at what you're wearing. You guys look like idiots. Have you seen yourself? You think that's this is what happens when you build structure on top of structure on top of structure. What? You can be vertically aligned and be horizontally cruel. Should we help this woman? No, don't help this woman. The vertical rule here is don't help her because it's the wrong day. He says, well, I don't care about the vertical rule. Love is my rule. Why? Because your vertical rules are structure and system-based, shape-based. But my rules are stream-based. I'm going to help this woman like you would help your dog. Yeah, but that's going to violate the structure. He says, I'm not a structure person. I'm a stream person. Ponder this, Matthew 21. Think of this, think of this, think of this. Jesus, it said, don't know if it's true. Jesus, we've been told, don't know if it really happened, goes into the temple and he starts flipping over tables. What tables was he flipping over? He was flipping over the tables of those who bought and sold what? Anyone? Bueller? Anyone? What tables did he flip over? They were buying and selling. Shout it out to me in the comments. Doves. He flipped over the tables of those who bought and sold doves. Pray tell, at 33, when he's in the temple, what would people be selling doves in the temple for? For women who came in, who had children, who were unclean, who had to buy a dove in order to sacrifice to fulfill Leviticus. And he comes in and says, this structure is contrary to the heart of God. Excuse me. You just threw over those doves. They just flew away. there's an unclean lady going to come in here, never going to be able to go back to church. Thank you. Why? She's got to buy it. I've got to kill it. She's got to buy it. I've got to sell it. He's got to kill it so that she can be cleansed from what? From having a child in the sin. What child? Well, double sin, uncleanness if it's a girl. And Jesus comes in and it says he turned over the table of the buyers and sellers. Buyers and sellers of what? Pigeons. Here's what we don't know. Could have been really gross. They could have been selling out front. Okay, sweetheart, you're poor. You can't afford the lamb. No problem. 2 pence for this, 2 pence for this. Okay, he's going to take it. They could have walked in and, had this thing, and the guy's like, what do you do? Oh, that's him killing. You're clean. Going home. We know, for ours, we know, he was taking the pigeons and bringing them right back out to the table and reselling them when she was leaving. Why would anybody be coming to buy pigeons to sacrifice to God? Because I want to go home with my family, and I can't because I'm dirty. Because the rules say I got to give turtle doves. And what Jesus says, well, now that's great. Yeah, great. I hope you're happy. You turned over the turtle dove tables, and now no woman is going to be able to go home until we get some more turtle doves. Well, he just didn't want them selling them. Well, now they got to go catch their own turtle doves and bring them up here and sacrifice it. What he was saying was the very law that my parents believe, that the structures believe, that our entire society has believed, he came in and goes, it's not in harmony with the mind of the stream. I don't believe he turned over the tables. Maybe he did. People always use the scripture to justify violence. I can go in there and shoot things. I can go in there. I had members of my church. I can go in there and do that. Jesus turned over the temple. I get a gun. And we in not realizing what was really happening, we embody Satan through violence, borrowing from the deeper truth of toppling false, constrictive, stagnant ideas of religion. Which is why. Why what? Why we have to come back next Sunday. Listen, I don't know if you got anything. Somebody said, well, you said it was going to be great, and it really wasn't that great. Maybe it wasn't. It's not because it's not great. It's because I maybe stumbled in trying to explain it. But there's something massive that I'm trying to get. And it's why we should be more loyal and dedicated than ever before to pressing through our former structured thinking and getting down to the deep stream thinking. We'll get to that. Thank you for your support. MikeandConnie.com/support. Thank you for your support. MikeCon LLC on the app, MikeCon LLC. This is our ministry. You support our ministry. We are ministers. We are ministering. We are missionaries. We are doing a mission, bringing forth, trying to bring forth. And you support us, and it means so much. Or Michael and Connie LLC, 2870 Peachtree Road Northwest, number 230, Atlanta, Georgia, 30305. It's Michael and Connie LLC, 2870 Peachtree Road Northwest, number 230, Atlanta, Georgia, 30305. It's just a couple of you a week, right? Several of you Cash App, several of you Venmo, several of you go on the thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. You are literally supporting us. Literally. Thank you. Bless you. Your notes of encouragement, your support means beyond anything I can say. Peace, health, light, protection, preservation, soundness, and abundance upon each one. Angels guard us all this week, loaded with benefits, Lord. We believe to see your goodness in the land of the living. Light arise in darkness. The joy of the Lord is their strength. And God, I thank you that the echo of what I've clumsily tried to convey, that it reaches deep down, that we can have the courage to dive into the stream and to let love and the true light take us to the end, to the omega view, where we will see it in the largeness, where we will see you in the largeness, not the shadowed you, but the light and the largeness as revealed in the living word. Peace on your people. Peace on all. Peace on earth. The not yet world, the peace of the not yet world, come into the right now world in every sphere. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. Okay, I think we're done. Have a great week. Connie loves you. Mikey loves you. Olivia loves you. Kenobi, Pop loves you. I love you. God loves you. Remember, nothing else matters but God. See you next week.